So during the course we have worked with many things inside of Xamarin Forms. We have of course worked with some like XAML. We have learned a few things about Xamarin Forms that allow us to easily reuse code and even to use code that comes from Android and iOS, and even implemented App Center. But during this section I want to talk about some bits that inside XAML will allow us to do some very interesting things with very little code in some scenarios. For example, in this lecture I want to show you how very easily on Android you can change a tabbed page to be at the bottom. So first things first, I am here on the expenses app that we worked on earlier in the course. And all I want to do is navigate here to the tabbed page. We have this main page that we changed to be a tabbed page instead of a content page, so it shows two tabs for two of our other pages that we have. Now what I want to talk about is how on Android you by default have these tabs at the bottom of the screen, right below the toolbar. And while of course this works and many Android users have become accustomed to this, many different developers have moved this tabbed page, or this tab bar rather, to the bottom, just like we see on iOS. They argue that it just provides with better user experience, since it would be at a place that is easier to reach. Now I won't talk about which one may be better or if you should or should not do it, but I will tell you how you can absolutely achieve this with Xamarin Forms, and in fact it's going to be quite easy. So I am here in the main page.xaml for, again, my expenses application. And really all I have to do is set that this tabbed page on Android is going to set the toolbar placement to the bottom. Now, how do I tell the tabbed page that? That is something that is not possible on iOS, and in fact it's not necessary. What we can do is actually add a specific code right here in the shared code that would execute only for the Android part. So that is something that we haven't done so far, but I will show you how to do that. So to get to the Android bits of XAML that only work on Android, that are only going to be executed on Android, I will first need to add a new XML namespace here. Let's call this Android. And what this is going to do is going to be pointing to a specific namespace. So let me write CLR namespace : that is going to be Android specific. And this is going to be very straightforward. This is going to be inside Xamarin, inside Forms, and there is one that is called platform configuration. So in the platform configuration, we are going to find Android specific. And of course, there is also an iOS specific that we're going to take a look at as well in a further lecture in this section. But Android specific is the place where we're going to find this ability to set the toolbar placement to the bottom. And I will also just have to set the assembly to Xamarin Forms core. And just like this, now inside of my tabbed page, I will be able to access the Android namespace. And in the Android namespace, there is also going to be a tabbed page. Of course, this one is not exactly the same type. There is a type that is called in the exact same way in this other namespace. But this particular tabbed page does contain a property that is called toolbar placement. And all I have to do is set this to be bottom. This could also be default or top, which both would be resulting the same thing. But now, just like this, I am setting this tabbed page to have a toolbar placement of bottom in the case of Android. This of course is Android specific. This namespace is not going to be there for iOS because, well, that wouldn't be Android specific. But this is everything, really everything that we have to do. Let me go ahead and show you what the result is going to be on an Android simulator. And of course, this wouldn't have any effect on our iOS application. So here, as soon as the application runs, now we see that the tabs are at the bottom, and this is Android, entirely Android. But now the tabs are at the bottom when at the beginning, if we didn't set that, they were at the top right below the toolbar. And so this is a very easy way in which you can set the tab page to display the tabs at the bottom on Android, which by the way led us to learn that we can set Android and iOS specific functionality directly from the shared code. So if you wanted to do something similar for iOS, you would be able to do that by simply changing or creating a new namespace reference here. In fact, in the next lecture, we're going to learn how to do something that is new on iOS as well, which is of course going to be iOS specific, similar to what we just did here on Android.